The chapel smelled of lilies and wealth. Gold trim lined the pews. The string quartet softened each breath, and light from the arched windows filtered in like it had been hired to perform. I sat in the front row, hands folded over the clutch. Jordan gave me last year on my birthday, a muted beige thing I suspected she bought out of guilt rather than love. On my body was the pale rose dress she once wrinkled her nose at, said it made me look too middle class. I wore it anyway. Quietly, stubbornly. Elaine Monroe sat just one pew behind me, wrapped in lilac silk and confidence the kind you can only buy over years of never being told no. Her smile didn't flicker once during the ceremony, even when Jordan and Devin fumbled over the vows. I watched my daughter, radiant in her custom gown, whisper laugh into his shoulder like she had no idea I was there. Or maybe she did, and that was the point. The ceremony blurred. I heard the officiant pronounce them husband and wife. I clapped when the crowd clapped. I stood and sat when directed. I thought about the cheesecake in the fridge at home that I'd promised myself for later, as if sugar could numb the ache building in my spine. Then came the speeches. Devin went first. He was sweet. Nervous, but sweet. Thanked his mom and dad, his brothers, even his childhood soccer coach. The room laughed politely, and then Jordan took the mic. She didn't look at me. She looked at the guests, at Devin, at Elaine. I want to thank my real mother, she said, voice bright and full. Elaine Monroe for always being there. For making me the woman I am. For half a second, there was silence. Not heavy silence. Just the kind that feels like gravity shifted. Then applause broke out loud and loving. Elaine pressed her hand to her chest, then waved it away, like modesty was something she wore for special occasions. Jordan turned and smiled at her, a warm, private smile. My palms didn't sweat. My heart didn't race. I didn't cry. I simply sat there, my legs crossed at the ankle, and felt something inside me close so gently I almost missed it. She didn't know who paid for that dress, that honeymoon, that future, and she was about to find out. People at the wedding saw a woman in a rose-colored dress sitting alone in the front row. They didn't see the waitress uniform folded in my closet or the burn scars on my wrists from bakery ovens that never stopped. They didn't know that Jordan used to sleep behind the counter of a 24-hour diner while I closed out tables at 2 a.m., or that I'd wake up at 4 to bake conchas and deliver them before sunrise. Her father left when she was 3, said he wasn't cut out for family. I watched him toss his duffel bag over his shoulder like he was headed to a vacation, not walking out of a life. I told Jordan he moved to Houston for work. She never questioned it, at least not out loud. When she turned 7 and asked if he was coming to her school play, I said maybe. I knew the answer. She cried that night when he didn't show. I held her so tight my arms went numb. There was no backup, no child support, no grandparents nearby. Just me and her, and a small one-bedroom rental off Route 42 where the kitchen light never worked unless you kicked the baseboard twice. I bought that house 3 years later. A sagging roof, rotting porch, but it had a yard, and I saw a future in it. I refinished the floors myself, learned how to patch drywall from YouTube. Every time I got discouraged, I looked at Jordan, asleep on the couch, and remembered why I said yes to every double shift. When the other kids got store-bought Halloween costumes, I stitched hers by hand. When their moms came to cheer practice in SUVs, I came in a flour-dusted apron and parked 2 blocks away because I didn't want her embarrassed by my rusted sedan. She never thanked me, but she smiled when she found extra snacks in her lunchbox, and I took that as enough. She got into Tulane with a partial scholarship. I sold the last thing my mother ever gave me. Her wedding necklace, a delicate strand of gold she smuggled from Mexico in the hem of her dress. I cried the night I handed it to the jeweler, not because I regretted it, but because part of me felt like I was severing a link between the women who'd fought for me and the woman I'd raised to forget us. College was expensive. So were Brace's dance classes, cheer camp, SAT prep therapy when she broke down her sophomore year. I paid it all. Quietly, no strings, no lectures, just checks in the mail and text messages that read, "Do you need anything else, mija?" She didn't answer often, but when she did, it was usually a list. I filled it. I didn't raise her for applause. I raised her to stand tall in rooms I could never enter. And for a while, that felt like enough. The first time she presented at a campus leadership conference, I watched the live stream alone in my bedroom eating takeout noodles. I clapped. No one else heard, but I clapped. Now, years later, I stood outside my own kitchen window, coffee in hand, watching morning light spill across the floor. She was married now, with a new last name, a new family, a new mother apparently. And yet I was still the one paying the water bill. Devin seemed like a good man the first time I met him. Polite, curious, soft-spoken, in a way that made you lean in. When Jordan brought him home for Thanksgiving during her senior year, I remember thinking, finally, someone who sees her, who might soften that hard edge she'd developed somewhere between freshman dorms and corporate internships. He complimented my stuffing, washed the dishes without being asked, and looked Jordan in the eyes when she spoke. That was all it took for me to hope. They got engaged a year later. No big surprise. Jordan called me after it happened, breathless, and giddy said it was perfect. Mom and he did it on a boat. I imagined Devin kneeling under string lights, probably with Elaine in the background clapping. She was the one who'd rented the boat, I'd find out later. She liked events, I was told. She had a taste for the curated moment. I met Elaine a month after the proposal at a brunch Devin's family hosted at their lake house. She greeted me with a kiss on the cheek and eyes that scanned not in judgment, but inventory. Her voice was honeyed and practiced. So wonderful to finally meet the woman who raised our girl, our girl. That was the beginning. She called Jordan darling, bought her a Dior clutch, took her to a Women in Business conference in Chicago, encouraged her to go after a leadership position at work, told her she had Monroe ambition. Jordan started copying her tone, her wardrobe. She began signing cards to me with Love J instead of Mija. And sometime between cake tastings and dress fittings, she started calling Elaine Mom E, like it was some sweet inside joke. I was never explicitly excluded from the planning. I just wasn't consulted. The bridal shower was at Elaine's country club. The guest list went out before I saw it. When I asked about helping with centerpieces, Jordan smiled and said, "You know I love you, but Elaine's just better at these things." I nodded. Of course. Elaine's china gleamed. Her kitchen smelled like citrus and money. Her emails had signature lines. Mine had stains from food orders and flour. I bought the veil, paid the balance on the photographer, reserved the shuttle bus for guests. No one mentioned it. I didn't ask for credit. I told myself the details didn't matter, that what counted was Jordan walking down the aisle in a gown I'd helped fund toward a man who seemed to love her. I told myself that right up until the moment she stood at the altar and thanked another woman for shaping her into who she was. After that, I stopped telling myself stories. I started reviewing receipts. The night after the wedding, I didn't cry. I made tea, sat in my kitchen with the overhead light humming above me, and opened my laptop. The table still bore scratches from Jordan's high chair, days back when applesauce was a meal, and she clapped every time I got the spoon to her mouth. I ran my finger along one of those scratches, then pulled up the accounting software. I went line by line. 4 years of Tulane, $124,000 after scholarships. I'd paid almost all of it from catering profits, seasonal bonuses, and one emergency line of credit I hadn't touched since the early 2000s. I'd once considered refinancing the house to keep up. In the end, I just stopped replacing broken things. The downtown apartment Jordan moved into after graduation. The one with the rooftop view and the concierge, I co-signed that lease. Paid 6 months up front so she could focus on her career, not rent. She'd sent me a thank you card that said, "You're the best. Love you." No one else knew I'd dipped into my retirement savings to make it happen. The car, a sleek little Honda Civic she drove like it was leased by God. In my name. I handled the insurance too. I knew the payment schedule better than my own birthday. Half the wedding, everything outside the venue. I paid the florist's final bill when Jordan said Elaine's card had bounced temporarily. I covered the photographer when the deposit deadline crept up. I booked the guest shuttle, ordered custom menus, and tipped the DJ. Elaine's contribution was the cake and the lighting package, both listed on the invoice I kept in a manila folder labeled Wedding Expenses, just under taxes 2022. And the honeymoon, Jordan called it a surprise gift from Devon. In truth, it was a reservation I made through my friend Maria, who runs a travel service. All-inclusive 5 nights in Tulum. I even paid the romantic extras upgrade because I thought maybe starting in beauty would lead to kindness. I stared at the spreadsheet until the numbers stopped meaning anything. The totals blurred, but the effort didn't. The years, the choices, every skipped vacation, every repaired zipper instead of a new coat. I clicked over to the shared business folder and found the tax statements. Just to be sure, I called Mr. Riley. He came by the next morning, brought muffins like he always did when he thought I needed comfort, but didn't want to say it out loud. We sat on the porch, papers between us. "She doesn't know, does she?" I asked. "No," he said. "She thinks most of it came from the business she helped you name, the catering company. She assumes it runs itself now, and the car still in your name. Insurance, too, if you ever wanted to pull back." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I nodded slowly. Folded the paper in half. My voice didn't shake, but my stomach did. No more Tom. He looked at me, surprised by how quiet I was about it. "I mean it," I said. "It stops now." Then I stood up, walked inside, and deleted the standing transfer I'd set up for her monthly grocery allowance. I didn't flinch. It was time for her to learn what life cost without the mother she claimed she never had. The first thing I canceled was the credit card. It had a $3,000 limit, just enough for Jordan to swipe her way through brunches and boutique skincare without noticing the bill. I didn't close it. I just removed her access. Quietly. No alert. No warning. I waited for the call that never came. The utilities came next. Gas, electric, Wi-Fi, all had been set up on my account years ago when she moved in. I stopped autopay. Not a full stop, just a pause. I watched the invoices pile up on the shared dashboard, untouched. A week passed, then another. By the 3rd week, I delayed the grocery transfer. Normally, I sent it on the 1st. This time, I waited until the 4th. She texted me that morning. "Jordan, hey Mom, is the bank acting weird? Something's off." My card was declined. I stared at the message for a full minute, then typed back, "Me. Haven't heard anything. Maybe check again later." She didn't respond. I imagined her at Whole Foods staring at the screen, Devon behind her pretending not to notice. I showed up at their apartment that Saturday. No warning, just a knock. Jordan opened the door in a hurry, her face made up like she was expecting someone else. "Mom, you should have called," she said, stepping aside. "We're kind of on our way out." "Won't stay long," I said. "Just wanted to see the place again." It looked the same as it had the week after the wedding, immaculate, curated, soulless. The new addition was a large, framed photo of Elaine in the hallway, smiling on the beach, Jordan beside her. I stopped in front of it. "She gave that to us as a gift," Jordan said quickly, a little too quickly. "She's been really generous. I can see that." Devon stepped in from the kitchen. He smiled politely, handed me a glass of something pink and bubbly. I declined. "We were just talking about how strong Jordan is," he said. "Elaine says she gets her resilience from her side of the family." My hand tightened around the strap of my purse. I looked at Jordan. She didn't correct him. I smiled. Small. Measured. Then met Devon's eyes and said, "Resilience costs money. Ask your bank." He blinked. Jordan looked down. I turned and walked toward the door. "You sure you don't want to stay for lunch?" Jordan asked too late. "Maybe another time," I said. "If I'm still footing the bill, might as well enjoy the meal." I walked out without waiting for a reply. The click of the door behind me sounding more final than it should have. Outside, the sun was bright, but the air had cooled. I zipped up my jacket, got into my car, and pulled out without checking the rearview mirror. The next week, I went to the post office and picked up a thick manila envelope Mr. Riley had mailed over. Inside, documents account, summaries, asset listings, and transfer authorizations. Everything I needed to finish what I'd started. The invitation came 2 weeks after our last conversation. A printed card on thick ivory paper cursive script, reading, "A toast to 1 month of marital bliss." I almost laughed when I opened it. I hadn't been invited to plan the wedding, but apparently I was welcome to celebrate its longevity. I arrived 5 minutes late, just long enough to be noticed, but not long enough to seem dramatic. Elaine greeted me at the door with a glass of champagne and a careful smile. "So glad you could make it," she said. Her eyes swept me up and down. I smiled back and handed her a small envelope. "Thank you," I said, my voice even. I wouldn't miss it. The brunch was held in the backyard of Elaine's home, manicured and symmetrical like her reputation. Round tables dressed in white linens, centerpieces of white roses, and eucalyptus, a harpist, playing softly under a canvas tent. I found my seat near the back. Jordan didn't see me until much later when she was already deep in conversation with one of Devon's aunts. She offered a polite wave. I returned it and stayed seated. After the mimosas and the quiche, Elaine stood at the head table and tapped her glass. "I just want to say," she began, "how proud I am of these two. Jordan, darling, you've become everything I ever hoped for in a daughter. Your strength, your grace. It reminds me of our side of the family, and it's such a joy to call you my own." Applause followed. Jordan beamed. Devon kissed her cheek. I waited until the room quieted. Then I stood. "May I say a few words?" All eyes turned. Elaine froze, her smile still in place, but no longer alive. I stepped forward, folder in hand. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. "I just want to clarify a few things I said. The lease for Jordan and Devon's apartment funded by me. The honeymoon package in Tulum, charged to my card. The car Jordan drives to work, co-owned by me. Still insured, under my name, in fact. The air went still. The wedding photographer paid in full by me. The shuttle service, the monogrammed menus, even the veil mine." A slow murmur spread through the tables. Jordan's face drained of color. Devon looked confused. Elaine opened her mouth but found nothing to say. She said I wasn't her real mother. I continued. "That's fine. Real mothers don't need titles. But real life? It's about who pays the bills when no one's looking." Then I turned to Elaine. "Starting Monday, your daughter is entirely yours. Good luck." I didn't wait for a response. I placed the folder on the table in front of Jordan, turned and walked toward the garden gate. Behind me, I heard silence stretch thin, then the clatter of someone setting down a glass too hard. I got into my car, drove home, and reheated the coffee I'd left on the counter that morning. That night, I slept with the window open and didn't dream once. By morning, the text messages had already started to arrive. The morning after the brunch, Jordan called 5 times. I let everyone ring. By evening, she'd moved to text. "Mom, I don't understand why you do that in front of everyone. You made it seem like I'm some kind of charity case. Can we please talk? Just us." The messages shifted over the next few days from indignation to confusion, then to something closer to sorrow. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just thought you didn't care about that stuff. You never said anything. I'm sorry. Okay, can we fix this? I replied to one. You didn't just erase me, Jordan. You cost me the ability to give without fear. She didn't respond. By the end of the week, Devon's parents had pulled back no more invites, no more group photos. Elaine kept her distance. I imagine she felt betrayed in a different way, embarrassed that her porcelain image had been cracked so publicly. Jordan started picking up extra shifts at work. A mutual friend mentioned she was looking into subletting the apartment. The Civic was listed for sale online a few days later. I didn't watch any of it with joy. There's no pleasure in seeing your child fall, even when they jumped from a ledge you warned them about. Instead, I turned inward. I hired 2 new employees at the catering company and took back the role of head chef for a few months, just to remember the rhythm of my own hands. I painted the kitchen, bought a set of copper pots I'd admired for years, and booked a solo trip to Santa Fe. I'd never seen the desert in bloom. It was time. Some nights I missed her. I'd see a young woman in the grocery store, choosing between name-brand cereal and the store label, and I'd think about Jordan at 19, asking if I could transfer $50 for textbooks. I always did. Always, more than she knew. But even that ache had softened now. I'd mistaken giving for connection. I'd confused silence for strength. What I did at that brunch wasn't revenge. It was correction. It was truth in full color. One evening, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee and watched the sky shift from coral to navy. The breeze smelled like honeysuckle and something older, maybe freedom, maybe grief. I took a sip and said it out loud just once. I gave her everything, and finally gave myself back. Then I stood, emptied the cup, and went inside. There were invoices to send bread to prep for morning deliveries, and a new flavor of cake I wanted to try for the fall menu.